The shot that shook the stars. The stars had never been this silent. Across the galaxy, entire fleets moved, each one ready for war. The coalition had been planning for years, thinking they could crush Earth and wipe humanity from the stars. But they had no idea what was coming. The massive warship UES Vindication, humanity's first true battleship, floated silently in space, its hull glowing faintly. On board, Captain Darius Venn stood on the command deck, his eyes locked on the view of the stars ahead. His hands rested at his sides, clenched into fists. He could feel the weight of the moment, pressing on his shoulders. This wasn't just a test of Earth's new weapon. This was the first real strike humanity would make against the galaxy. And this shot would decide everything got around him. The crew of the Vindication was tense. Officers stood at their stations, checking and rechecking their equipment. The air was thick with anticipation. Today, Earth would fire its first railgun, a weapon unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. It was humanity's secret weapon, one shot, one chance, to show the galaxy that Earth was no longer weak. "We're ready, Captain," reported Lieutenant Harris, his voice steady but filled with nervous energy. He had been with Darius since the beginning of the project. He was the one who had helped design the railgun, and the ship that carried it. Darius nodded slowly. His mind raced, but his face remained calm. Fire when ready. The railgun's target was the distant Clyran fleet, a coalition of alien species that had long looked down on Earth. They had ignored humanity's warnings, thinking the humans were too small and too weak to stand against them. Earth's military was a joke to them. But today, that would change. The railgun powered up, its massive barrel lining up with the fleet's location. Energy gathered inside the ship, the air vibrating with the power building inside the weapon. The ship's core hummed, and Darius could feel it deep in his bones. The crew waited in silence, every second stretching out like an eternity. Finally, the moment arrived. The weapon was charged, aimed, and ready. Darius gave the order without hesitation. Fire. For a second, there was no sound. No rumble, no explosion, nothing. Just a strange, eerie quiet that seemed to hang in the air. And then the shot was unleashed. The entire ship trembled as the railgun's pulse shot forward at faster than light speed. The blast so powerful it almost bent space itself. The Clyran fleet didn't even know what hit them. Their scouts had seen nothing. Their sensors gave no warning. And then the first railgun shot ever fired by Earth tore through their ships, piercing through them as if they were nothing. The Clyran flagship, a massive warship the size of a city, disintegrated with a single hit. In an instant, the entire fleet was obliterated one shot, and it was over. The shockwave from the blast spread through space, reaching the planets nearby. Entire star systems fell into darkness. The shock was felt across the galaxy. There was no escaping it. The power of Earth's railgun was undeniable. Back on Earth, in the high command centers, people stared at their monitors, their eyes wide with disbelief. The message was clear. Humanity had just sent a shockwave across the stars. In a hidden underground command center in the United Earth Defense Council, General Mace watched the video feed from the Vindication. His jaw tightened as he saw the destruction unfold. He had never believed it would work, but now, there was no denying the truth. Humanity had just shown the galaxy its strength. He turned to his officers. "We've made our mark. The galaxy will never forget this." Back aboard the Vindication, Darius stood still, staring at the destroyed fleet on the view screen. His heart was still pounding, but there was no joy in his chest. No sense of victory. Just the heavy realization that they had just changed the course of history. "Captain, we're getting signals from the Clyran homeworld," Lieutenant Harris said, breaking the silence. They They're calling for a ceasefire. Darius didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his mind spinning. The first shot had been fired. The galaxy had just learned what humanity was capable of. But the war was far from over. This was just the beginning. "We've sent a message," Darius said, his voice cold and steady. "Now we wait to see how they respond." Across the galaxy, alien fleets in every corner of space began to react. News of humanity's first railgun. Shots spread like wildfire, shocking species who had laughed at Earth for so long. Fear spread like a plague. For the first time in history, the galaxy realized that humanity was no longer something to ignore. The message was clear. Earth had arrived, and it would no longer be dismissed. But as the shockwaves spread and the galaxy trembled, one question remained. What would humanity do next? Silence across the stars. The moment the railgun shot landed, the galaxy fell into a strange, unsettling silence. For decades, the coalition had laughed at Earth, its military forces, and its technology. To the aliens, humanity was nothing more than a small, insignificant species, struggling to make its mark on the universe. But that one shot had shattered everything. Admiral Chiron, the seasoned leader of the coalition forces, stared at the holographic display in front of him. His fleet had been monitoring the space surrounding the Chiron system when the shockwave hit. It was so powerful it had overwhelmed their systems. In a matter of seconds, the Chiron fleet had been reduced to rubble, leaving nothing but burning debris floating in space. No warning, no distress signal. Chiron muttered to himself, his voice hoarse with disbelief. He had seen countless battles, but never anything like this. Not even the Zoltrax war machines, the deadliest weapons the galaxy had ever known, could do this. Kyren leaned forward, staring at the report in front of him. One shot had destroyed an entire fleet. The humans had just sent a message louder than any war could. They were no longer a small, weak species. They were a force to be reckoned with. Far across the galaxy, on the planet Seraphis, alien governments were in chaos. The news of humanity's attack on the Chiron fleet spread like wildfire, igniting panic in every corner of the galaxy. In the capital city, the Seraphis High Council met in an emergency session. The leaders of the various alien species gathered. Around a long table, their faces filled with fear and disbelief. They had spent centuries thinking they were the top power in the universe, that no species could challenge them. But now, they had seen Earth's power firsthand. "This is impossible," said Chancellor Yora of the Zikra Dominion, his voice shaking. "How could they have developed such a weapon? We've spent decades studying the Chiron fleet, and it was supposed to be unstoppable." "There's no time for disbelief," said General Tursek, the military leader of Seraphis. "If this was one ship, we might have brushed it off. But humanity has something more. This is a direct threat to all of us." Another member of the council, a small but sharp-eyed diplomat from the Xander Dominion, spoke up. "They must be stopped, now. If we don't act, we risk losing everything. Earth must be contained before their power spreads." Chiron's words echoed in their minds. "We are in the presence of a new power, and they are coming for us." Back on Earth, Captain Darius Venn stood on the command deck of the UES Vindication, staring out at the stars. He had already seen the reports. The Chiron fleet was gone, wiped out by a single shot. Humanity's railgun had done the unthinkable. But as the moment of victory passed, a cold reality began to settle in. This wasn't just a military victory. It was the start of something much bigger. "Captain," said Lieutenant Harris, interrupting his thoughts, "the coalition is mobilizing. We're getting reports of fleets gathering in the Zoltrax system. They're preparing for something." Darius turned to face his crew. They were ready for anything. But in his heart, he knew that the real challenge had only just begun. The galaxy was not going to roll over. It would fight back just as humanity had fought to stand against the rest of the universe. "We've made our mark," Darius said, his voice steady. "But now we wait. The galaxy is reacting, and we need to be ready. We'll show them we're not a threat to fear, but a power they can't ignore." On the edge of Coalition space, Admiral Chiron stood alone on the bridge of his flagship. The news of the Clyran fleet's destruction still weighed heavily on his mind. His thoughts raced, trying to come up with a plan. He had no choice but to call for an emergency summit of the galaxy's remaining fleets. They had to unite if they were going to stop Earth. "Set course for Zoltrax," Chiron ordered. "We must make contact with the remaining leaders." "We will. Form a united front. No one stands alone against Earth." As his fleet jumped into hyperdrive, Chiron could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. This was no longer just about defending one world. It was about saving the galaxy from a force far stronger than anything they had ever faced. And he had no idea whether they could succeed. Meanwhile, on the planet Viridian, an isolated world, far from the Coalition's influence, King Tarok stared at the news feeds. The once proud kingdoms of the galaxy were now on edge, and rumors of Earth's victory had already spread through the back channels. "What is happening?" Tarok muttered to himself, watching as footage of the Clyran fleet's destruction played. "On a loop, we have always ruled this galaxy. How could Earth have a weapon like this?" Tarok's advisors sat in silence, knowing the weight of the situation. "King Tarok, we must join the Coalition." "There is no other way," one advisor suggested. King Tarok's gaze remained fixed on the screen, his once unshakable confidence was now riddled with doubt. "Perhaps. It's time to bend the knee. The galaxy as we know it is over." Across the galaxy, the message was the same. Fear. The silence in the aftermath of the Railgun shot was deafening. The galaxy had felt it, and now they were all waiting to see what humanity would do next. Would they push forward, or would Earth's message be enough to keep the rest of the universe in check? Humanity's first shot had been fired. The galaxy had fallen silent, but one thing was certain: Earth would not be ignored anymore. The fear spreads the galaxy was waking up to the truth. Humanity had fired its first shot, and the galaxy was forever changed. The power of Earth's Railgun had shaken not just the stars, but the foundations of the universe itself. Entire fleets had vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving only scattered debris and stunned alien forces in their wake. The Clyran fleet was just the beginning, and now the question was simple: how would the galaxy respond? On Arkad, an ancient world at the edge of the galaxy, the ruling council gathered in a hidden chamber. The city outside was dark, its streets silent as news of Earth's victory spread through the encrypted channels. In the dimly lit room, Admiral Zarek, once a proud military leader of the galaxy's greatest fleet, stood before the Council of Leaders, their faces grim with concern. "We are united in fear," Zarek said, his voice cold. "Humanity has done the impossible. They've shown us their strength, and now we must respond. This is no longer a matter of diplomacy. It's a matter of survival." He turned to the holographic display in front of him, showing the recent destruction of the Clyran fleet. One shot, and an entire fleet was wiped out. "We cannot allow them to continue this unchecked." One of the council members, Draxus, a towering figure from the Veldar Dominion, stood up. "And how do you suggest we fight them? They have a weapon the likes of which we've never seen." "We fight the way we always have," Zarek replied. "We unite, form an alliance, and bring every fleet we can to bear against them. We strike before they become too strong." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. "We have no choice," said Chancellor Yora, his voice trembling. "If we don't act now, Earth will destroy us all. We must gather every fleet and strike at their heart." Across the galaxy, The fear of humanity's power spread like wildfire. On the world of Seraphis, the ruling council held emergency sessions, scrambling to find answers. Reports of Earth's victory flooded in from every corner of the galaxy, each more urgent than the last. The Zikra Dominion, the Tixiri Union, and even the Xandan Collective began to mobilize, each realizing that they were no longer safe in their distant corners of the universe, not in the heart of Zikra, a planet once known for its military might. Admiral Chiron stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the images of the human warship that had delivered the first devastating railgun shot. The Chiron fleet was gone, and the reports coming in from other systems showed humanity's growing power. He clenched his fists, knowing that his worst fears had come true. "They've done it," Chiron muttered. "The humans are a threat, and they've only just begun." On Earth, Captain Darius Venn watched the reports come in with a sense of calm that had become all too familiar. The galaxy was on edge, and Earth's message had been received loud and clear. Humanity wasn't going to wait for permission. They had already shown their strength, and now the galaxy would either bow or be crushed beneath their boot. Darius stood on the bridge of the UES Vindication, staring at the glowing map of the galaxy. "They're afraid," he said, his voice low. "And that's exactly what we want." Lieutenant Harris turned to him. "Do you think they'll attack us, Captain?" Darius nodded slowly. "They have no choice. The galaxy can't stand to. Let us grow stronger, but we will be ready." As the days passed, the United Earth Fleet continued to advance, moving toward new systems, taking control of trade routes and strategic planets. The galaxy's leaders were scrambling, trying to form a united front, but they were divided. Some believed in negotiating with Earth, hoping to find some way to live in peace with the humans. Others, like the Zikra Dominion, believed Earth's strength had to be crushed before it could spread further. The fear was real. Alien fleets began to gather, moving toward Earth's home system, preparing for the inevitable battle. But Admiral Chiron and the other coalition leaders knew that humanity's Railgun was a game changer. They had no idea how they could win, only that they had to try. Back on Earth, the first signs of an incoming invasion appeared on Earth's sensors. For the first time, humanity would face a full-scale military response. The coalition was coming. The fleets were gathering. Darius stood before his officers, his gaze hard. "Prepare for battle. They'll come, thinking they can stop us. We'll show them they're wrong." The crew went to work, their faces focused. The UES Vindication was ready, and Earth's warships were not just weapons. They were symbols. Symbols of strength. Symbols of power. Humanity would no longer hide in the shadows of the galaxy. In the depths of the Tixiri Union, a dark plan was set into motion. The Union's secret weapon, a weapon that could disable Earth's Railgun, was activated. It was a desperate move born from fear and necessity. The galaxy had no choice but to fight back. Tensions continued to rise across the stars. The alien alliance was forming, gathering fleets from every corner of the galaxy. And the humans, though vastly outnumbered, were ready to face them. The next battle would decide the fate of the universe. The galaxy was on the brink of war. Humanity had struck first, and now the galaxy was coming together to fight back. The alliances were forming. The weapons were ready. But one question remained. Would humanity stand alone, or would they crush everything in their path? The coalition unites. The galaxy had always been divided. Factions had fought against each other for centuries, each race and empire believing they were the true rulers of the stars. But the moment humanity unleashed its first railgun shot, everything changed. The galaxy's old divisions had to be set aside. Earth had become the greatest threat to every alien species, and in the face of this new power, they had no choice but to unite. In the heart of the Zikra Dominion, Admiral Chiron paced the bridge of his flagship. The Zekra fleet had been one of the first to retreat when the first railgun shot had wiped out the Chiron fleet. Now, every ship in the Dominion was on high alert. The coalition had called for an emergency meeting, and all the most powerful factions were converging on the Zoltrax system, a neutral zone deep in the heart of coalition space. This is the eye, beginning of the end, Chiron muttered to himself, his fingers tapping restlessly on the console in front of him. Humanity has awakened, and now we have to stop them. But how? His officer, Commander Elira, stood at his side, her face filled with uncertainty. The human fleets are unmatched. Their railgun, it's more powerful than anything we've ever seen. Chiron gripped the back of his chair. We're not the only ones who realize that. The entire galaxy is now moving against Earth. If we don't act together, we're finished. Meanwhile, on Terra Vin, the leaders of the Tixari Union gathered. In a darkened conference room, the once proud species now found itself at a crossroads. They had spent years in their own isolated part of the galaxy, largely uninterested in the affairs of others. But Earth's first railgun shot had shattered their complacency. We cannot wait any longer, said Admiral Norshan, the Tixari military. Leader, we've seen the reports. We've seen the destruction. If we don't unite with the coalition, we'll be next. The Tixari Chancellor Selka leaned forward, her yellow eyes narrowing. And yet, we have never shared our weapons with the rest of the galaxy. The Chronos blades are ours, and ours alone. We don't have a choice, Norshan insisted. The humans have one weapon we can't counter their railgun. We need to fight back, and we need to fight together. After a long silence, the room filled with murmurs of agreement. Reluctantly, Selka nodded. Very well. Let's prepare to join the coalition. If the humans can destroy entire fleets, we must unite all forces against them. Our only chance is together. At the Zoltrax system, the Galactic Coalition was in full assembly. Alien leaders from across the galaxy filled the massive conference hall, their faces stern and filled with tension. The Zekra, Tixari, and many other species had finally set aside their differences, understanding that humanity had forced their hands. The Elder Council, once an impartial body that had overseen the galaxy's politics, now stood divided. Chancellor Yora of the Zekra Dominion stepped forward to address the room. The time has come to acknowledge the true threat to our survival. Humanity has proven that they are not a species to ignore. They are no longer a small, insignificant race. They are a power that can destroy fleets with a single shot. Admiral Chiron stood beside him, his face grim. Earth has done what we believed impossible. One ship, one weapon, wiped out a fleet. They could do it again. And next time, it could be us. If we do not unite now, we will be erased. Another council member, Naran, the leader of the Xandan Collective, stepped forward. It's not just the railgun. Earth's fleets are highly advanced. We've received reports from spies within their systems human ships can move faster than anything we've ever seen. Their technology is far beyond ours. The council room was filled with the murmurs of fear. The galaxy had never faced a threat like this. Yora turned toward the Xandan fleet commander, who was silently watching the proceedings. What of your fleets? Can they handle this threat? Maybe. If we can find a way to target their railgun, we might stand a chance. The commander's voice was low, but his words carried weight. But without unified command, we're doomed. The humans will pick us apart, one by one. Back on Earth, Captain Darius Venn stood in front of a massive star map, watching as new reports came in from the Galactic Council. He could see it happening. The galaxy was coming together. Every faction was moving, gearing up for the coming war. The coalition had finally united, but they were still scattered. Earth was no longer seen as an underdog. The galaxy was coming. to understand what humanity was capable of. "We're not out of the woods yet," Darius said, his voice calm but resolute. "The galaxy is afraid. They've started organizing. They'll be coming for us soon." Lieutenant Harris looked at the star map. "How soon, Captain?" Darius stepped closer to the map, his eyes scanning the incoming fleet movements. "Too soon. We'll be ready. But we need to strike first. We can't wait for them to build their forces. The moment we hesitate, we risk losing everything we've gained." As the coalition fleets gathered and prepared, the galaxy's greatest military minds were turning their attention toward Earth. They knew one thing: humanity had forced their hand, and now they had to face the consequences. There was no way out, no surrender. This was war. The first strike had been fired. Now the galaxy was going to return it, with everything they had. The stakes were higher than ever. In the Tixerai Command Center, Admiral Norshan prepared his forces. "We may not be able to stop their railgun, but we have weapons of our own. We will make them pay for every inch they take." The galaxy's response had begun. As the fleets prepared to meet in battle, the galaxy's future was hanging in the balance. Earth had shown its strength, and now the question was, would the galaxy fight to protect itself, or would humanity become the dominant power in the universe? And as the preparations continued, one thing was certain: the war had only just begun. Tides of war. The galaxy had never seen a war like this. After months of preparation, the alien forces finally began their march toward Earth. Unified by fear and desperation, the coalition's fleets gathered in the Zaltrek system, ready to strike. Before humanity's power could grow further, their plan was simple: crush Earth's forces before they could gain any more ground. Earth was ready. On the UES Vindication, Captain Darius Venn stood at the helm, his eyes focused on the tactical display in front of him. The massive human warship was leading the charge, with the UES Concord, UES Excalibur, and the rest of humanity's fleet close behind. The Alliance had underestimated them, but humanity had only grown stronger. "Captain," said Lieutenant Harris, his voice tense, "the alien fleets are approaching. They're massive, but they're not as fast as us. They've underestimated the human edge in speed and technology." Darius didn't answer immediately. His mind was calculating the odds, analyzing the positions of the alien fleets. He knew the enemy had outnumbered them vastly, but humanity had the advantage of the railgun, and one shot could make all the difference. "I know," Darius said. "We'll hold our position for now. We don't fire unless we have to." Harris raised an eyebrow. "You're going to wait?" Darius turned slowly, his eyes cold and calm. "Yes, the railgun is our ace, and we're not going to waste it. If we make the first move, we risk losing the element of surprise." The alien fleets, once separated by distance and politics, now moved as one, led by Admiral Chiron. The Zekra, Tixerai, and Zendan fleets had merged into a single formation, their ships massive and armed with the galaxy's most advanced weapons. Yet, as they approached Earth's forces, a sense of unease gripped the alien commanders. "Admiral," said one of Chiron's officers, "we've detected a small human fleet ahead. They're outnumbered, but they're holding their position." Chiron's eyes narrowed. He could see the Vindication in the distance, its massive silhouette casting a long shadow over the approaching enemy. He knew that humanity had already shown its strength. One shot had shattered a fleet, but now the humans were about to face the full might of the galaxy. "Prepare the fleets," Chiron ordered. "We engage them head-on. No mercy." The battle began with a single railgun blast. Darius stood at the command station of the Vindication, his fingers resting lightly on the console. He could feel the tension building in the ship's systems, each moment adding to the weight of the coming fight. "Captain," Harris said urgently, "we've locked on. The railgun is ready." Darius took a deep breath and turned to face the screen. The alien fleet was closing in, their weapons primed and ready. Open fire. The railgun roared to life, and a beam of pure energy shot forward, faster than the eye could follow. The shot tore through the front of the enemy fleet, obliterating the flagship and several smaller ships in a single strike. But the alien fleets did not flinch. They had come prepared, and they were determined. They fired back with plasma bursts and missile barrages, their ships descending on Earth's forces like a storm of metal and fire. For a moment, a Vindication's shields flickered under the intense fire. The ship shuddered, but held. The railgun had already changed the tide of the battle, but now it was Earth's turn to prove they could fight without it. On the Zekra flagship, Admiral Chiron watched the destruction unfold on his screens. Humanity's railgun had torn through their first line of defense with terrifying speed, but now the battle had turned into a bloody slugfest. Push them back, Chiron ordered, his voice low but filled with the fury of a man backed into a corner. Surround them. Don't let them escape. The alien ships moved in, their tactics calculated and precise. They knew they had the numbers, and they were determined to grind humanity into submission. But as the battle raged, something unexpected happened. The human ships, despite being outnumbered, fought with an intensity that none of the alien forces had anticipated. Each human ship moved with deadly precision, each shot fired with the knowledge that their survival depended on it. Admiral, the human fleet is holding steady, one of Chiron's officers reported. We can't break through their formation. Chiron slammed his fist onto the console. They're fighting like they have nothing to lose. The battle continued for hours. Missiles flew, railguns fired, and space itself seemed to explode in a cacophony of light and sound. But despite the alien forces' overwhelming numbers, humanity's forces held firm. Captain, the enemy is retreating, Harris said, staring at the tactical display. We've forced them to fall back. Darius's heart raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. The alien forces were more than capable of crushing humanity if they fought together. But for some reason, they were hesitating. We have to finish this, Darius said firmly. We can't let them regroup. With a final railgun shot, humanity's fleet moved forward, striking the remaining alien ships with brutal force. Chiron's flagship, the last ship standing, was struck directly by the beam. Its shields shattered in an instant dot. As the last of the alien fleet fled, the human victory was complete. The galaxy had seen humanity's power firsthand. The railgun had won the battle, but the humans' will to fight had made all the difference. On Earth, Darius Venn stood in the command center, his crew cheering around him. Humanity had just fought the first great battle of the war and won. But Darius knew that this was only the beginning. Prepare for the next strike, Darius said, his voice steady. The galaxy will not forgive us this victory, and they will come again. Humanity strikes back. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had shown the galaxy its might, wiping out entire fleets with the devastating power of their railguns. The alien forces had been forced to retreat, but they were not broken. Desperation had begun to set in, and with it, a growing realization among the galaxy's leaders. If they didn't stop humanity now, they would never have the chance again. On the Zekra flagship, Admiral Chiron stood before a large holographic map, his hands clenched into fists. The alien fleet had regrouped, but they were scattered and weakened. The Zekra Dominion, Tixari Union, and Xanthan Collective had all lost ships, their forces scattered across the stars. There's no turning back now, Chiron said, his voice cold. If we don't act soon, we will lose everything. Humanity has already proven they can destroy entire fleets with one shot, but we have something they don't have: our last hope. He turned to his commanders, who stood at attention. We've built a weapon, a last-ditch effort to stop humanity before they become too powerful. It's a Death Star, a massive ship capable of destroying entire worlds in a single blast. And it's our only chance. The weapon was called the Zoltrax, a ship of unimaginable size, armed with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. It had been in development for years, kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. But now it was the last hope of the Coalition. As the Zoltrax prepared to launch, the Tixery fleet assembled at its side, along with what remained of the Xanthan Collective. The remaining alien forces would make one final push to reclaim the galaxy. They would strike Earth with everything they had. On Earth, Captain Darius Venn watched the tactical feed from his warships. The victory at the Zoltrax system had given humanity a moment of relief, but the truth was clear. The war was not over. The alien forces were not going to back down. They were coming for Earth with everything they had. "We can't afford to let our guard down," Darius said to his officers. "The Zoltrax is more powerful than anything we've seen, and they will use it. We need to hit them hard, before they have a chance to deploy that weapon." He turned to Lieutenant Harris. "Set course for the Tixery homeworld. We need to end this now. No more hesitation." The final battle was set to take place in the heart of the Tixery system. The Zoltrax, now fully armed, had been positioned at the heart of the alien forces, its weapons primed for a devastating strike. If the weapon could fire, it would wipe out everything in its path, including Earth. As the alien fleet advanced toward Earth, Darius knew time was running out. His ships were ready, but the enemy was overwhelming. For the first time, humanity faced a threat that could destroy their entire planet. The railguns would not be enough to stop the Zoltrax. But there was one thing they still had: their will to survive. The Zoltrax loomed over the Tixery system, its weapons ready. But just as the fleet began to charge, a sudden flash of light filled the sky. Humanity's warships, led by the Vindication, appeared out of stealth, their railguns glowing with deadly energy. "Fire!" Darius shouted. The railguns erupted in unison, sending beams of pure energy toward the alien fleet. But the Zoltrax was already firing back, its own weapons lashing out in a wave of destruction. The battle between the two forces was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Railguns clashed with massive energy beams, filling the space with light and fire. But humanity had a secret weapon, the Vindication's ultimate charge. Darius stood at the helm of the ship, his fingers dancing across the control console. "Prepare. The final strike. Target the Zoltrax's core." The Zoltrax fired again, and the Earth fleet responded. The Vindication dodged and weaved through the chaos, closing the distance between itself and the alien flagship. The final strike would be the last chance humanity had to survive. The railgun on the Vindication charged. A brilliant light filled the chamber as the weapon powered up. The shot was aimed directly at the Zoltrax's core, the only part of the ship that could bring it down. "Fire!" Darius commanded, and with a deafening roar, the railgun fired. The shot pierced through the heart of the Zoltrax, hitting its core with such force that it exploded in a flash of brilliant light. Silence. Massive Zoltrax collapsed into 1,000 pieces, its death throes sending shockwaves across the system. The alien fleet that had once seemed so powerful was now gone, disintegrated by humanity's power. The galaxy stood still. Earth had fired the first shot, but now it had fired the final one. The alien forces, once so confident in their might, had been wiped out by the very species they had once dismissed as weak. On Earth, Darius Venn stood in silence as his fleet received word of their victory. The alien forces were no more. The war was over. Humanity had won. But in his heart, Darius knew something deeper. This was only the beginning. The galaxy had witnessed Earth's power, but humanity would have to fight again to build a future. in a universe that would never forget their rise. The galaxy on its knees, the war was over. But the galaxy had yet to understand the true meaning of humanity's victory. The Zoltrax, the most powerful weapon the alien forces had ever created, was no more. The combined fleets that had once made the galaxy tremble now lay in ruins, scattered across the stars, their leaders defeated and broken. Earth had done the unthinkable. They had not only survived, but they had triumphed. On Earth, in the heart of the capital, Captain Darius Venn stood on the observation deck of the UES Vindication, his eyes fixed on the stars. The war was over, but the weight of their victory still hung heavily on his shoulders. Humanity had struck the final blow, and now the universe would never be the same. The galaxy had come to Earth's doorstep, but they had never truly understood what humanity was capable of. Captain, Lieutenant Harris called out from behind him, raking his thoughts. "We've received word from the Galactic Council. They're ready to surrender." Darius turned slowly, his gaze unwavering. "Surrender?" His voice was calm, but there was a cold edge to it. "What choice do they have?" "The coalition is broken apart," Harris continued. "The Zikra, Tixari, and Zandan forces have all agreed to join Earth's control. The rest of the galaxy ... they're falling in line." Darius nodded. The galaxy had fought hard, but they had failed to recognize humanity's strength. Earth's railguns, its fleet, its will to survive, everything had been tested and proven. Now there was only one thing left to do: rule. The alien leaders, once proud and powerful, were now being forced to kneel. On Earth's homeworld, the representatives of the Galactic Council had arrived, looking exhausted and defeated. They had no choice but to come and ask for mercy. Earth's victory had not been an isolated incident. It had been unquestionable, irreversible. Chancellor Yora of the Zikra Dominion was the first to speak. His species had once been the dominant force in the galaxy. Now, he was but a shadow of the leader he had once been. His words, when they came, were filled with regret. We ... We surrender, Earth. We recognize your power, and we accept your rule. We will serve you in whatever capacity you choose. Admiral Chiron of the Coalition stood beside him, his face pale. He had fought for so long, but now he could see no way to win. This galaxy is yours now. We fought against you, underestimated you, and now we will bow to you. We have nothing left. On Earth, the news was met with a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had done it. They had proven themselves in the greatest test of all survival. They had faced the galaxy's mightiest fleets and torn them apart. There was no longer any question. Humanity would not just be a part of the galaxy. Humanity would lead it. In the United Earth Fleet Command Center, Darius stood with his officers, watching the final reports come in. "The Coalition is officially under Earth's command," Harris reported. "The galaxy's strongest powers are now our allies." "Or our subjects." Darius nodded slowly, his face unreadable. "We did what we had to do. This isn't about power for power's sake. It's about survival. And now we ensure that no one ever threatens Earth again." The galaxy had fallen silent. Alien worlds, once rich with their own cultures and ambitions, were now turning toward Earth, waiting to see how humanity would govern. Some would join Earth's rule willingly, grateful for the peace they had been offered. Others, however, would remain wary, knowing that they were now subjects of the human empire. Under the watchful eye of Earth's might in the Tixari Union, Chancellor Selka reluctantly signed the peace agreement. Her people had been among the first to realize that Earth's rise could not be stopped. She had seen the Zoltrax fall, the final attempt to challenge humanity's power obliterated in an instant. And now she stood before Earth's representatives, forced to accept their new place in the galaxy. Admiral Chiron, standing in his private quarters, looked out at the stars. Once he had led the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Now he was a broken man, humbled by the strength of humanity. We were wrong, he said quietly to himself. The humans were not the weak ones. We were, but the defeat was more than just a military one. It was a loss of pride. The galaxy's great empires had thought of themselves as invincible. They had believed they were untouchable. But humanity had shattered that illusion. On Earth, celebrations were muted. There was no triumphalism, no grand speeches. Instead, humanity turned inward, reflecting on the cost of war. The victory had been earned in blood, both human and alien. But now Earth could begin to rebuild, stronger than ever. Darius Venn stood again, this time in front of a small group of Earth's leaders, his face solemn. The war is over. But this is not the end. This is just the beginning. He paused, his voice steady, filled with a quiet authority. We will lead the galaxy, but we will do it with respect, strength, and wisdom. The galaxy has seen the power of humanity, and they will remember it for generations to come. The galaxy was on its knees, but Earth's rule had only just begun. The survivors of the once proud galactic empires were left to ponder what had just happened. The universe had learned a lesson in fear and power, and the name of Earth would forever be etched into its history. For humanity, the future was bright. But they knew the path ahead would be one of leadership, responsibility, and strength. The galaxy had been reshaped. Humanity was no longer a small species among the stars. They were the stars, and no one would dare challenge them again.